Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Tonight, we descend into the haunted sands of Arabia with The Nameless City by H.P. Lovecraft. This is not a mere retelling. It is a reimagined adaptation, reshaped in suspenseful cinematic language to bring fresh terror and wonder to modern ears. Prepare yourself, for in these ruins, even death may die. As I approached the city without a name, a chill certainty gripped me. It was cursed. The valley I crossed lay barren beneath the pale moon, and from afar its ruins jutted from the sands like bones from a shallow grave. The stones themselves seemed to whisper of ages drowned in flood, older than pyramids, older than memory. An unseen force pressed against me, urging retreat, warning me of secrets no mortal should uncover. Hidden deep in Arabia's desert, the city crumbles in silence, its walls half swallowed by the sands of countless centuries. It stood before Memphis was raised, before Babylon's bricks were ever fired. No legend dares give it a name, yet around desert fires it is spoken of in hushed tones, feared by tribes who cannot explain why. It was here that Abdul al-Hazred, the mad poet, dreamed his forbidden verse. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die. I should have heeded the warnings, yet defiance carried me into the untouched waste, my camel the only witness. I alone have seen the city, and that is why terror etches itself upon my face, why the night wind rattling my windows chills me more than any man alive. When I first beheld it, the ruins stared back at me, cold under the moon, lifeless yet watchful. My triumph at finding it dissolved into dread, and I halted, waiting for dawn. Hours passed as the east grew pale, stars fading into a rose-gold horizon. Then came a low moan, and though the sky was clear, the sands stirred among the ancient stones. As the sun's edge blazed over the desert rim, I thought I heard, deep, metallic, resonant, a sound like some forgotten hymn rising from the earth itself, saluting the fiery disk as Memnon once hailed the dawn from the Nile. My ears throbbed, my mind ablaze with fevered visions, as I guided my camel across the endless sands, toward that silent ruin, too ancient for Egypt to remember, too forgotten for Meroe to claim. I alone among the living had laid eyes upon it. I wandered through the broken foundations of palaces and houses, shapeless remnants of a civilization erased. No carvings, no inscriptions, nothing to prove that men, if men they were, had ever built or lived here. The place reeked of an age unwholesome, alien. The proportions of the ruins unsettled me, as though designed for beings not of human form. I dug with my tools, desperate for proof, but the sands yielded only silence. When night fell and the moon returned, a chill wind swept through the ruins, carrying with it a dread I could not master. I dared not sleep within those walls. As I lay outside, a faint sandstorm rose behind me, sighing over the gray stones, though the desert lay still beneath the moonlight. At dawn I woke from nightmares too vivid to recount, my ears ringing as if struck by metallic bells. The sun bled red through the last gusts of sand that hovered above the nameless city, while the rest of the desert lay unnaturally calm. Once more I entered the ruins,
their shapes swelling beneath the dunes like some monstrous sleeper beneath a shroud. Again I dug. Again I found nothing. By noon I rested, and later traced the outlines of streets long vanished, walls half buried, buildings nearly erased. The city had been mighty once. I could feel it in the bones of its stones. I imagined splendors from an age so distant that even Chaldea could not recall it. I thought of Sarnath, doomed in the land of Manar, and of Ib, carved of gray stone before mankind itself existed. Then suddenly, I came upon a low cliff where bedrock pierced the sand. My heart quickened. Hewn into its face were crude facades, small, squat temples or houses carved by hands older than history. Their interiors, I knew, might still guard secrets from ages beyond calculation, though the storms had long since erased whatever carvings once adorned their walls.
The openings I found were low, half choked with sand, but I forced one clear with my spade and crawled inside, torch in hand, determined to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden. The chamber revealed itself as a temple, ancient beyond imagining, built by a race that worshipped here long before the desert was born. Primitive altars and squat pillars stood in silence, their proportions disturbingly small, as if shaped for creatures who could never stand upright. Symbols carved into stones glimmered faintly in the torchlight, crude yet deliberate, hinting at forgotten rites too grotesque to name. The chamber stretched wide, yet so low I could only kneel, and in its shadowed corners I felt a chill, as though the stones themselves recoiled from memory. I crawled out, restless, eager to see what other temples might conceal. Night had fallen, but curiosity burned brighter than fear. The moon cast long, skeletal shadows across the ruins, yet I pressed on. Another aperture yielded to my spade, and I entered with a fresh torch. This chamber was narrower, its walls crowded with shrines carved in cryptic forms, each one whispering of ceremonies no human tongue should repeat. As I examined them, a sudden noise broke the silence, the restless cry of wind and the uneasy stirrings of my camel outside. I rushed out to find the moon blazing over the ruins, illuminating a dense cloud of sand. It swirled as if driven by a fierce wind, yet the air atop the cliff was still. My camel trembled, disturbed by the chill gusts that seemed to rise from nowhere. Fear prickled my skin, but I forced reason upon myself, recalling strange local winds I had seen at dawn and dusk. Surely this was the same. Yet as I watched, the sandstorm traced itself back to a source, a black opening in the cliff, far to the south, almost beyond sight. A temple's mouth yawning wide, exhaling its secret breath into the night. Through the choking veil of sand I pressed forward, drawn to a temple that loomed larger than any I had yet seen. Its doorway, less buried than the rest, gaped like a wound in the cliff. I would have entered at once, but the force of the wind that burst from within nearly extinguished my torch. It howled out of the darkness, icy and relentless, scattering sand across the ruins as if the city itself exhaled. Then, as suddenly as it had risen, the gale subsided. Silence returned, yet I felt a presence moving among the stones, unseen but undeniable. Even the moon above seemed to tremble, its light wavering like a reflection in disturbed water. Fear gnawed at me, but wonder drove me onward. When the last whisper of wind was gone, I stepped inside. The chamber was vast, larger than the temples I had explored before. Though I could stand upright here, the altars and stones were still unnaturally low, built for worshippers who were not men. On the walls and ceiling, faint streaks of paint lingered, curling patterns nearly erased by time. 2 altars bore carvings more intricate than any I had yet seen, twisting designs that stirred both awe and unease. Raising my torch higher, I realized the roof's symmetry was too precise to be natural. Whoever carved this place possessed engineering skill beyond comprehension. Then the flame flared brighter, and I saw it, the opening from which the wind had come. My breath caught. It was no natural fissure, but a door, deliberately cut into the living rock. I thrust the torch forward and beheld a tunnel, its roof low, its floor descending in a steep flight of countless tiny steps. They were too small, too numerous, more like footholds than stairs. I knew at once I would never forget them. They would haunt my dreams forever. My mind reeled with warnings whispered by Arab prophets, tales of places men must never seek. Yet hesitation lasted only a heartbeat. I turned, feet first, and began to descend the black passage as though climbing down a ladder into the abyss. No mortal descent could compare to mine, save perhaps in the fevered hallucinations of delirium or the poisoned dreams of drugs. The passage plunged endlessly downward, a shaft like some haunted well, and the torch I carried above my head could not pierce the abyss ahead. Time dissolved. I no longer knew the hours, nor dared consult my watch. The distance I had traveled filled me with dread. The tunnel twisted, steepened, then leveled into a suffocating crawl space where I was forced to wriggle feet first along the stone floor, my torch stretched out before me like a fragile talisman. The ceiling pressed so low that even kneeling was impossible. Beyond lay more steps, tiny, steep, and unending. I scrambled downward until my torch sputtered and died, though I did not notice at first. I still held it aloft as if it blazed, my mind unhinged by the lure of the forbidden. In the blackness, fragments of my secret lore surged through me, lines from Alhazred, whispers from the nightmares of Damasius, echoes of Gauthier de Metz. I muttered of Afrasiab and the daemons drifting with him down the Oxus, then chanted again and again a phrase that clawed at my sanity, the unreverberate blackness of the abyss. When the descent grew steeper still, I found myself reciting in sing-song tones verses of darkness, until fear silenced me. I remembered words describing a reservoir of night, black as a witch's cauldron filled with moon drugs distilled in eclipse. I imagined leaning over that chasm, seeing beneath me walls smooth as glass, varnished with the pitch of death itself, the slime cast up from the sea of death upon its shore. Time itself had dissolved when my feet touched level ground once more. I found myself in a chamber deeper than memory, higher than the temples far above, yet still suffocatingly low. I could not stand, only kneel, and in the dark I crawled blindly, hands brushing against walls that felt disturbingly smooth. Soon I realized the passage was lined with cases, wooden frames sealed with glass fronts. The shock of encountering such materials in this abyss chilled me. They stretched in perfect rows along both sides, oblong and horizontal, grotesquely reminiscent of coffins. I tried to move one, then another, but each was fastened tight, as though guarding its secrets. The corridor seemed endless. I stumbled forward in a frantic crawl, crossing from side to side to confirm the walls and cases still stretched on. In the blackness, my mind betrayed me, conjuring visions of the corridor as though I could see it. And then sight became real. A faint glow shimmered ahead, growing stronger with each step. At first, it revealed only the outlines I had imagined, but soon it unveiled a hall beyond all expectation. This was no crude relic like the temples above.
It was a masterpiece of alien art. The walls blazed with murals, rich, vivid, fantastical designs that defied human description. The cases themselves gleamed with golden wood, their glass fronts flawless, and within them lay forms preserved in death. Mummified beings stared back at me, grotesque beyond the wildest nightmares of man. Creatures whose shapes mocked all reason, whose existence shattered the boundaries of imagination.
Words failed to capture the monstrosities I beheld. They were reptilian in essence, yet their forms defied all categories, sometimes recalling the crocodile, sometimes the seal, but more often shapes no naturalist or scholar has ever imagined. They stood roughly the size of a man, their forelimbs ending in delicate, flexible hands, disturbingly human in design. But their heads shattered every law of biology. In one glance I thought of cats, bulldogs, satyrs, even mankind itself, yet none could truly compare. Their foreheads bulged monstrously, their jaws stretched like alligators, horns protruded where no creature should bear them, and their faces lacked noses entirely. For a moment I doubted their reality, suspecting idols carved to inspire fear, but the truth pressed upon me. They were mummified beings, a species that had lived and breathed when the Nameless City was alive. Their grotesqueness was crowned by finery, robes of exquisite fabric, ornaments of gold, jewels and metals unknown to man. Their importance was undeniable. They dominated the frescoes above, painted with unmatched skill in scenes of cities and gardens fashioned to their scale. I realized these murals were not mere decoration, but history, an allegory of the race that worshipped them. To the people of the Nameless City, these creatures were what the she-wolf was to Rome, or the totem beast to a tribe, symbols of origin, guardians of destiny. As I studied the paintings, an epic unfolded before me. I saw a mighty metropolis by the sea, ruling the world before Africa rose from the waves. I saw its wars, its triumphs, its defeats. I saw the desert creep in, strangling its fertile valley, forcing thousands of its people, these reptilian beings, to carve their way down through the rock, seeking another world foretold by their prophets. The vision was vivid, terrifyingly real, and as I traced the painted passages, I recognized them. They were the very corridors I had descended, the same abyss into which I now crawled. As I crept toward the growing light, the murals revealed the final chapters of the epic, the farewell of a race that had dwelt in the Nameless City for 10 million years. Their souls recoiled from abandoning the valley they had carved from virgin rock, shrines where they had worshipped since the dawn of the earth. In the brighter glow, I studied the paintings more closely. The reptilian figures I now understood were not symbols, but the race itself, those who had built and lived here. Their civilization was astonishing, greater in some respects than Egypt or Chaldea, yet strangely incomplete. Nowhere did I see depictions of natural death or burial. Only wars, plagues, and violence filled their records, as if they had clung to the illusion of immortality. Near the corridor's end, the scenes grew extravagant. I saw the city abandoned, its ruins bathed in moonlight, a golden aura hovering above fallen walls, half revealing the splendor of its past. Then came visions of a paradise beyond belief, a hidden world of eternal day, radiant cities, ethereal hills, valleys untouched by decay. Yet the artistry faltered. The final murals were grotesque, bizarre, recording the decline of the ancient race. Their bodies wasted away, but their spirits grew fierce, haunting the ruins by moonlight.
Emaciated priests, robed in finery, cursed the upper air and all who breathed it. And in one last terrible image, I saw a primitive man, perhaps a wanderer from Iram, the city of pillars, torn apart by the elder race. I remembered then the Arabs' fear of this place, and I was grateful that beyond this point the walls and ceiling lay bare, free from further revelations.
At last I reached the end of the low-ceilinged hall, where a vast gate poured forth the phosphorescent glow that had guided me. I crept closer and cried out in awe, for beyond lay no chamber, no sanctuary, but an endless void of radiance. It was as though I gazed from the summit of the world upon a sea of mist, infinite and blinding. Behind me stretched the cramped passage where I could not stand. Before me opened an eternity of subterranean light. From the threshold descended a steep flight of steps, tiny, countless, vanishing into the glowing vapors. A massive brass door, swung back against the wall, loomed beside me. Its thickness was monstrous, its surface carved with grotesque bas-reliefs, as if meant to seal away this inner world forever. I touched it, but it would not move. Exhaustion overcame me, and I collapsed upon the stone floor, my mind ablaze with thoughts too vast to silence. With closed eyes, fragments of the frescoes returned to me, visions of the Nameless City in its prime, its fertile valley, its distant trade. Again the crawling creatures haunted me, their prominence in the murals too deliberate to dismiss. The city itself had been drawn to their scale, its temples and corridors built low, forcing worshippers to crawl in reverence. Perhaps the rites themselves demanded imitation of the reptilian gods. Yet no theory could explain the suffocating passage I had endured, lower even than the temples, where kneeling was impossible. As I thought of the mummified forms lying so near, dread surged anew. Mental associations are cruel things, and I recoiled from the realization that, save for the primitive man torn apart in the final mural, mine was the only human presence among these relics of primeval life. Yet, as always in my wandering life, wonder soon overcame fear. The abyss of light beckoned like a challenge to the greatest explorer, promising mysteries no man had ever seen. I knew that far below those unnaturally small steps lay a hidden world, a realm of colossal ruins and forgotten cities such as the frescoes had hinted at. My imagination burned with visions of valleys and temples waiting in the glow. My dread was not of what lay ahead, but of what lay behind, the immeasurable antiquity pressing down upon me. The corridor of mummified reptiles and primeval frescoes was horror enough, but the true terror was the age of it all. The stones themselves seemed to leer with a malice born of aeons. Even the maps painted on the walls showed continents long vanished, oceans erased from memory, with only faint outlines resembling the world I knew. What had transpired in the geological ages since those paintings were made, no man could say. Life had once thrived in these caverns, in the luminous realm beyond. Now only relics remained, keeping their silent vigil through countless millennia. Suddenly, fear struck me again. Sharp, inexplicable, the same dread that had haunted me since first I saw the Nameless City under the cold moon. Exhaustion forgotten, I jolted upright, staring back into the black corridor that led toward the outer world. My heart pounded with the same sensations that had driven me to flee the ruins at night. And then, breaking the tomb-like silence, came a sound. A deep, low moaning, as if from a multitude of condemned souls. It rose from the very direction I was staring, echoing through the abyss, and in that instant I knew I was not alone. The moaning grew into a roar, reverberating through the narrow passage until the stone itself seemed to tremble. A cold draught surged from the tunnels above, restoring a fleeting sense of reason. I remembered the sudden gusts I had witnessed at dawn and dusk, winds that had once revealed the hidden corridors. Sunrise was near. I braced myself, telling my mind it was only a natural phenomenon, nothing more. But the gale became a shrieking fury, pouring into the abyss with a malice that no earthly wind could possess. I dropped flat, clawing at the floor, terrified of being dragged through the open gate into the phosphorescent void. My body slid inch by inch toward the abyss, and with each movement new terrors seized me. The blast felt alive, vindictive, as though the spirits of the elder race clawed at me in impotent rage. I thought of the lone human figure in the frescoes, the man torn apart by the reptilian priests, and shuddered at the comparison. The wind itself seemed to echo that violence, a spectral vengeance against all who dared intrude. I may have screamed, but if I did, my cries were swallowed by the infernal chorus of the storm. I tried to crawl against the torrent, but it was useless. Slowly, inexorably, I was pushed toward the abyss, toward the unknown world beyond. My reason broke. Madness claimed me, and in that delirium I babbled the words of Abdul al-Hazred, the mad poet who had dreamed of this place. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. Only the brooding gods of the desert know what truly happened in that abyss, what struggles I endured, what unseen force dragged me back to life. I will forever shiver in the night wind, haunted until oblivion, or something worse, claims me. The thing I faced was monstrous, unnatural, colossal, beyond all human conception, believable only in those cursed hours when sleep will not come. The blast had been infernal, a cacophony of voices, shrieking with the malice of desolate eternities. And then, as my mind reeled, those voices took shape. In the grave of aeon-dead antiquities, leagues beneath the dawn-lit world of men, I heard the snarling curses of fiends. I turned, and against the glowing mist of the abyss, I saw them. A horde of nightmare devils, grotesque, half-transparent, clad in alien panoply. No man could mistake their form, the crawling reptiles of the Nameless City. As the wind subsided, darkness swallowed me. The last of the creatures vanished, and with a thunderous crash, the great brazen door slammed shut. Its metallic reverberations rang out, swelling upward to the world above, saluting the rising sun as Memnon's statue once hailed the dawn from the banks of the Nile. And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.